morning, First Lady.
Morning, Gomati.
This morning we want to talk a little about domestic violence. For 2 days in a row last week, we would have witnessed the killings of two women in domestic violence situations. Could you tell us your general thoughts on that? And how do you think we as Guyanese and even leaders can play a critical role in helping to reduce these incidences?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize the fact that domestic violence is not only physical. We would have seen a manifestation of the physical nature of domestic violence, but there's also violence against the person, which could be psychological abuse. I mean, really belittling a person in any relationship, which is a symbol of the power of the perpetrator. And this happens throughout the country, across the races, across the classes, across ethnicities. So we have to say what it is that makes people feel that they must demonstrate this power, because it's not love, it's power, against a person. Are the egos of our males so stunted that they cannot accept that a woman decides, I don't think I want to go with you anymore? Or if she answers him back, he can decide, well, this is not, quote, respectful to him. I admit domestic violence is also perpetrated by women, although to a much less lower degree. But I think we have to look at this. How do we perceive each other? And it goes back to the kind of training and socialization that our children get from the inception. And you may know I've always been an advocate of HFLE from nursery, because that is when young people learn to understand who and what they are, and why they are different, and why they are like other people. So if we start with age-appropriate language at the nursery level, explaining, these are boys, these are girls, this is how boys respond to threats, this is how girls respond to threats. So you don't have this image, which is also perpetrated in our advertising, I think, and some of the shows, of this muscled macho man, proving his strength and his power wherever he goes. That we can have an equally powerful male who doesn't have to lift a finger and who doesn't have to shout and be abusive to prove he's a man. So that is one aspect of it. We also have to train our girls and our women that they're not there to be the pounding boards of whoever they're going with at the time. They do not have to accept the abuse. It is not their role in life to be beaten or disrespected in any way. So I think it's a lot of how we deal with the social issue. We also have to look at the economic issues, because many times women stay with a man because they say, how can I mind my children? I have nowhere else to go. We have instances where families tell the wife she has to go back. It's your husband. But face it, when they took their vows, regardless of religion, it was vowing to respect and honor each other, not to have one person dominating and in control of the other. With respect, of course. So we have to think of all these things, and when we look at how we address them, we start with the laws. Many times cases are not pursued because the victim might go back and say, he's a good boy, it's only when he drink up a little bit, he won't fight. But that is not the point. The point is he must not feel that she deserves a blow if she doesn't cook what he wants when he comes in, or she puts the food down in front of him in front of his friends and he feels it's not respectful. All sorts of foolish explanations that are given. So we have to look at that. But my view has always been, if a case is reported, regardless of what comes after, regardless of whatever compensation the perpetrator or his family might pay to the victim and her family, the case must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And people have to understand that this is a serious crime. Now, there's another facet of it that we take into account. How will the woman survive financially? And I know that Brazil, a few years ago, had set up a system whereby domestic violence perpetrators had to agree to undergo a course. I guess you could call it a course of re-education, where they started to really examine with assistance from social workers and psychologists the roots of their behavior. And that's what we have to look at. What is causing this behavior? What is also causing all the neighbors to sit around or stand around and either be entertained by the woman being beaten or abused, or just keep quiet because it's not their business? I do think we have to really start meshing as a community to understand that what affects one affects all. Because if you talk to the kids who grew up in those environments, they believe that is the norm. They believe blows and kicking and thumping are the norm. So we cannot expect them to behave differently. The girls believe that they're supposed to be beaten, you know. And, you know, even when I was very young, I know a young lady who said, you know, he's beat me because he loved me. Well, that's when she come into work with bruises and black eye and all sorts of things. So it's a question of really rethinking how we look at interpersonal relationships and look at one of the types of relationships that should be a loving and respectful and productive one.
First Lady, if you had to say there's
Mhm.
3 things that we have to do to
Mhm.
curb the situation in Guyana, what would you say they are?
3 things you said.
Yes.
Well, first, as I said, it's how we socialize our children, boys and girls. That's the first thing. The second thing I recognize is that a lot of our young men don't have role models close to the home or in the home. So we have to look at how do we help our young men as they grow to address the development of their characters and their personalities, what it is that makes them what I would call a viable human being. That would be the second thing, to see how we get our men and our boys engaged in this process. And the third thing, of course, is educating and empowering our women so that they do not feel trapped in any relationship, whether for social reasons or economic reasons.
And lastly, First
Mhm.
Lady, if you were to send a message for any victim of domestic violence, any person who's living in a
Mhm.
relationship that is
Mhm.
characterized by violence, what would be your word of advice to them at this time?
Well, you know, I always tell people I don't like to advise people because sometimes the person might have totally different feelings. But I think one of the things that a perpetrator likes to do is isolate the victim. So I think victims could seek someone they trust and can speak to so that they can get advice and get assistance from that person. It doesn't have to be a person in a position of authority. It could be a relative or a friend or somebody in the neighborhood who they know would listen to them in confidence without running up and down the neighborhood talking out this story, but really finding somebody you can confide in as a woman, basically as a victim, and talking your story so that you can get the help you need.
Okay, thank you very much for
You're very
sharing.
welcome.